to this episode of Sound Off Extra here on the official YouTube channel for the Solomonster Sounds Off podcast. I am the Solomonster. This is your Payback 2016 review, which just ended a few minutes ago. Payback from Chicago, always a lively crowd, and overall a really good show. I thought top to bottom in terms of the wrestling, I thought this was a very good show, save for some overbooked nonsense in a couple of the title matches that brought it down a little bit, and an injury in the opening match on the pay-per-view. Very, very scary moment. We'll talk about that in a second. On the kickoff show, we had Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler, a match that Corbin dominated most of. He had picked up Ziggler for a powerbomb out on the floor at one point and kind of flipped him backwards over his head. Dolph went face first into the steel post. And Corbin, acting all cocky, he's got this thing in the bag, and Ziggler rolled him up out of nowhere with a schoolboy for the shock pin. That one surprised me, but I fully expect Corbin to slaughter Dolph Ziggler on Raw. And then we had Kalisto and Ryback for the United States Championship. Hell of a match right here. The one that I bet they wish they had at WrestleMania. Obviously much better than their WrestleMania match. Someone on Twitter said, it was nice to see Phoenix against Cage on the WWE Network. And I laughed, all due respect to Ryback, Cage can do things in that ring at his size that Ryback wishes he could do. But I can see the comparison. Both guys deserve a lot of credit. This was a really fun match. A lot of false finishes. The crowd was totally into it. Kalisto got the win with the Salida del Sol, and so he retains the championship. The pay-per-view opened with the finals of the tag team tournament. Enzo Amore and Colin Cassidy against the Vaudevillains. The New Day were out there. They were sitting at ringside observing. It was only a few minutes into the match, and disaster struck. Simon Gotch threw Enzo into the ropes. He kind of threw him into the ropes, and Enzo was going to slide out to the floor. And he whipped him into the ropes so hard and so fast that Enzo's head hit I don't remember if it was the top rope or the middle rope. I think it might have been the middle rope on his way out of the ring. And his head whiplashed badly. And his arm got caught in the rope. His arm, it was just, the thing looked really ugly. And they replayed it a whole bunch of times. Enzo landed on the floor. His body was limp. If you looked in his eyes were completely glazed over. The eyes were open, but nobody was home. It was very scary. A lot of people were, tweeting me, is this a work? Is this part of the match? It became pretty apparent pretty quickly that it was not. The referee threw up the dreaded X. The trainer came out. After a while, they just focused the camera on the announcers. They would not show what was going on at ringside. But before they did that, there was a shot of Big Kaz. He was kind of pacing back and forth, and he was crying. And so if there was any doubt what was going on at that point, I'm sure Colin Cassidy is a very talented guy. I don't know that he's that good of an actor. You just look at the guy's face, you look in his eyes, and you could tell something was very wrong. And it was, what it reminded me of was, and I've seen the video, I'm sure a lot of you have, the incident that happened last year down in Mexico with Perro Aguayo Jr. Perro Aguayo Jr. was in I think it was a tag team match, I believe. It was the match with Rey Mysterio, and suffered, a broken neck, basically, in that match off a very basic maneuver, and was killed. And I'll never forget the visual of him kind of dangling there in the ropes in the setup for the 619, his body completely limp, just not moving. Nobody knew at that point that he was gone. And maybe he was, and maybe he died at the hospital. But the point is, it was such a basic thing. And he passed away. So immediately you see something like that, and you start your mind starts racing in a million different directions, and you start thinking the worst. Thank God he did not suffer a broken neck or worse. They kept updating us throughout the show. The final update toward the end of the night was that he was diagnosed with a concussion. All the other tests came back negative. He does not have a broken neck. He's moving his arms. He's moving his legs. He's talking. He's communicating. I would never in a million years think that a concussion diagnosis would be such a positive thing, but that was probably the best news of the entire night. Because if you saw that, that could have turned out a hell of a lot worse than it did. And all the best to Enzo Amore. It sucks for them. They just debuted. They were building up some real momentum. I don't doubt the Dudley boys were probably, stranded in the back at, Gorilla, waiting for the match to end so they can get their cue to come out, because I'm almost positive they were. But it's just a really shitty situation. I'm sure Simon Gotch feels bad. And look, accidents happen. They replayed the frickin' thing a million times, and it didn't look like he did anything wrong necessarily. Kind of like wrong place, wrong time kind of thing, and it happened. And thank God it wasn't worse than it was. But that match came to a screeching halt. Vaudevillains got the win by default. So, hell of a way to win a tag team tournament, but I guess that makes them the number one contenders now for the tag team titles. And I'm not even sure, I don't even remember if they made a formal announcement of the Vaudevillains actually having won the match by forfeit. Maybe I'm just assuming, but to me, that's the only decision that would make sense. I mean, I guess they could just throw the match away and there's no winner, but if you have one guy who's hurt and can't continue, that team forfeits the match. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just assuming where I shouldn't assume with this company, but I guess we'll find out on Raw tomorrow night. But I think either way, with Kaz and Enzo gone, by default, that would make the Vaudevillains the number one contenders. We had Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This is the match I was looking forward to down the main event. I mean, the whole Roman Reigns AJ thing was intriguing to me because they've never had a match before. But this was really the match I was looking forward to the most. This is the match that we should have gotten at WrestleMania. And as great as that ladder match turned out to be, I was very disappointed we didn't get that one-on-one match. We got it tonight, and it blew away even my expectations. Now, when I did the podcast earlier today, and I ran down my predictions for Payback, I made the comment that, even though they've had this rivalry, right? They've had this feud they bill it as 14 years, and it went through Ring of Honor, as many people are aware. They've had a bunch of matches. These two guys had yet to have a truly great match in WWE. The matches they had in NXT, they weren't bad matches, but they weren't great classic bouts. And I thought tonight they had a chance to really go out there and steal the show. Well, they went out there and they had an outstanding match. In my opinion, this was the match of the night. Some people might disagree and say the main event. You can go either way, because that was also a very good match. An excellent match, even. But if I had to choose between the two, I would go with this one. This was a great wrestling match. Lots of back and forth, lots of big moves. Although at one point I think Michael Cole referred to something as a Blue Thunder Bomb, but I don't think it was. Then he actually did the Blue Thunder Bomb. Some pretty innovative stuff in this match, but in the end, somewhat surprising. Even though I picked Kevin Owens to win, I didn't think it would be this clean. He beat Sami Zayn clean in the middle with the pop-up powerbomb. So Kevin Owens gets the win. He immediately calls on Byron Saxton to come in the ring and interview him. And Byron Saxton now Kevin Owens made the statement that now he can focus on getting back his Intercontinental Championship. And part of me was hoping he was going to say, now I can focus on challenging for the WWE Championship. Because I think Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns can probably have a hell of a pay-per-view main event. They could have done that for Extreme Rules, and they're not going to do that. Instead, Kevin Owens wants to get the Intercontinental title back. And I can appreciate that. I actually kind of love how obsessed Kevin Owens is with the Intercontinental title. At least I made the comment on Twitter. At least somebody cares about an undercard title in this company. Kevin Owens is possessed by getting back that Intercontinental Championship. And so he is going to challenge for it. And Byron told him that coming up next, it's the Miz and Cesaro. And he said, oh, thank you for telling me. In fact, I'm going to take a seat right now at ringside and watch this match. So Kevin Owens joined the announcers for commentary for the Miz and Cesaro match. And Miz and Cesaro had a good match. It wasn't anything great. It was good. But Kevin Owens made this match it's legendary in some ways. He completely, just absolutely owned all three of these bozos on commentary. He especially was quite brutal to Byron Saxton and to Michael Cole. Anytime Kevin Owens can get on commentary and browbeat Michael Cole and browbeat Byron Saxton, it's a good night. Very similar to what he's done the last few weeks with Richard Brennan on main event, and then poor Richard Brennan got shit canned. So Kevin Owens was great here. He put JBL's cowboy hat on at one point. He's sitting there with a bloody nose from the previous match. So he was great. The way this match ended, I actually liked this finish. And people were like, oh, Solomonster is going to be really upset because they did a distraction roll-up, which they did. But every now and then when you do a distraction roll-up, there is a time and a place to do that. and I thought that it worked here. I actually was a fan of this finish. We had Sami Zayn come out, I think from the crowd. He came from out of nowhere. He attacked Kevin Owens at ringside. Place was going nuts, so I was a little fearful that it was kind of a one-and-done type of thing, but then I was very happy to see Sami come back out because they're going to continue that feud. Based on what they did here, it seems to set up a four-way for the Intercontinental title at Extreme Rules, which should be a hell of a match. So these two guys are brawling outside. Cesaro has the match won. And Sami and Kevin brawl. They're out of the ring, but they're on the apron. And they got the referee distracted. Cesaro has the match won. He's got Miz, I think it was in a crossface. And Miz is tapping, and the referee is distracted. So Cesaro goes over. He knocks the two of them off the apron. Miz sneaks up from behind, gets the roll-up, and gets the pin. Cheap finish? Yes, but I thought here it worked. It was actually, I thought, a really good finish. And Cesaro put the Miz back in the ring. He gave him the neutralizer. And it looks like I said, they have a four-way perfectly set up for the next pay-per-view, which is only 3 weeks away if they want to go in that direction. I think they should. Although I wouldn't mind another match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, maybe with a stipulation. But if they do the four-way, I won't be disappointed. So this was good. This was good stuff. This was the Kevin Owens show. That's what this was. You could have put Kevin Owens out there for the rest of the show. He would have done just fine. Kevin Owens... Again, I know people are not everybody's a Kevin Owens fan, and there are still people who ignorantly mock him and mock his appearance, and he's a fat guy, or he wears a t-shirt and he wears basketball shorts. But you know what? That guy in the t-shirt and the basketball shorts is a fucking great wrestler, and he's a fucking great WWE wrestler too. So it's not just that he can wrestle; he's very entertaining. He's good on the mic. He's entertaining. He's probably one of the best heels, if not the best heel they have in the entire company. So say what you want to about Kevin Owens and his physical appearance, but Kevin Owens is awesome. And I hope that they realize this. I think they do, given how much time they gave him on this show. And at some point, he ought to be wrestling for the WWE Championship, because I think him and Roman Reigns could have some great matches. Chris Jericho and Dean Ambrose had a good match. Nothing great. I think because there were so many really good matches on this show, going back to the U.S. title match on the pre-show, I mean, there really were a lot of good matches up and down this card. Jericho and Ambrose kind of falls in the middle somewhere, but I thought they had a good match. Jericho, let me tell you something, this ring rope was probably the biggest heel of the night, maybe the number 2 heel after Roman Reigns based on crowd reaction. But this rope, Jericho hit his face on the rope and busted his nose open. So another casualty of the ring ropes here on this show. Dean Ambrose got the win in the end with the Dirty Deeds, which is something you don't say very often. You don't say that, hey, Dean Ambrose won clean in the middle on pay-per-view. But he did here, and it was a win that he needed. I mean, I know if you think back to the beginning of the year, I think Ambrose got a big win against Kevin Owens, so it's not like he never wins. But it's just the perception of this guy is that in the end, when it comes to the big one, he doesn't get the job done. He just doesn't win. He didn't win at WrestleMania. He didn't win at Roadblock. You could find a bunch of other examples of him not winning. I don't even remember what he did at the pay-per-view in February. But here he got the win. It was sorely needed. Where he goes from here, I don't know. My guess is him and Jericho probably have a rematch at Extreme Rules, because that's what they do. We had Charlotte with Ric Flair in her corner against Natalya, with Bret the Hitman Hart in her corner. Bret's all out there, not giving a fuck. As we know, Bret Hart did not want to be there, but he was doing it for Natty. I had high hopes for this match, and honestly, I mean, I've seen them have better. This was good, but this was not what I expected it to be. And then came the finish. Now let me say the positive about the finish. So they do the rehash of Montreal, and Bret Hart gets in the ring after the fact, and he gets up in Ric Flair's face and punched out Ric Flair, and then Bret puts Flair in the sharpshooter, which surprised me because, again, Bret's still recovering from prostate cancer surgery. I didn't think he would, not take a bump, but like do anything overly physical. I mean, you could throw a punch, but he put Flair in the sharpshooter. And Natty put Charlotte, so they had stereo sharpshooters going on. It was a great visual. That was a cool moment, but the finish here sucked. They had Lil Nate. Charles Robinson was out there as the referee. And Charlotte gets Natty in the sharpshooter. And he immediately and furiously calls for the bell. And the commentators, oh, she didn't tap out. What's going on here? And so sure enough, they rehashed the Montreal screwjob finish, which they've done a gazillion times since 1997. And I would always laugh over the years. They don't really do it now because they're on good terms. But when they weren't, they would talk about how Bret Hart can't get over Montreal. Just let it go, Bret. Just let it go. And I always laughed at that because Bret let Montreal go a long time ago. I know Bret can, bitch and moan about this and that. But Bret Hart let Montreal go a long time ago, long before Vince McMahon ever did. And he still hasn't. And they still trot this finish out every now and then. Now, maybe on Raw tomorrow night, they'll have an explanation for this. Maybe Lil Nate is going to be part of a little faction with them. I doubt it, but at least in the context of this show on this night, it made no sense. It was a very poor finish to what had been a good match, and just completely marred by the stupid finish. But it was cool seeing Bret Hart put Ric Flair in the sharpshooter. That's the best thing I could say about this. We had Vince McMahon come out to make his big decision on who would be controlling Monday Night Raw. Now, this was Vince live in Chicago, so you can imagine he was serenaded in chants of CM Punk, which he got very upset about as the crowd continued to chant CM Punk more and more often after he encouraged them to do so. He brought out Shane, he brought out Stephanie. This was basically a McMahon circle jerk in the middle of the ring. It was Stephanie going on and on and on about all of her accomplishments, and then Shane talking about all of the headlines that he made and his accomplishments and blah, blah, blah. This went on far too long, and maybe they were stalling for time since the tag team match went short earlier in the show. Maybe it threw everything off. This was fucking boring. This went on, and this is what they do, because it's TV, and I get it, but they take 20 minutes to do something or say something that could take 5. And that's what this was. And all of this just to get to the point of Vince McMahon saying, I want blood. Now, he was very careful to say, figuratively, I want blood. Because literally, he does not want blood. Although in the same breath, right after he said that, he said to Shane and Stephanie, I want the two of you to slit your throats. That's what he said. Figuratively, of course. He wants competition between the two of them. So I want the two of you to slit one another's throats for our entertainment. What a nice guy. And this is exactly what I said on the podcast earlier today. I said, now my theory was we end up with co-GMs. A lot of people were saying, well, Stephanie will get Raw, Shane will get SmackDown. And I said, well, maybe, that's possible. But I was going with the co-GM theory, and I was right. Now, they're not calling them co-GMs, but that's what they are. Vince said he's putting both of them in control of Monday Night Raw, 50-50. Shane and Stephanie will be running the show. No mention anywhere of Triple H, which is interesting because the only reason I even, before all of this started, said that I was kind of looking forward to Shane against the Authority, that kind of thing, was I want to see Shane and Triple H face-to-face in the middle of the ring. I want to see them, face-to-face, cutting that promo, mixing, fantasy and reality, and, doing a work shoot. And if we get there, great. But it looks like Triple H is staying far away from this storyline. And I wonder if that's by design. I get the sense that Triple H wants nothing to do with this. And for whatever reason, he doesn't want to be anywhere near Shane on TV with these storylines. And he's kind of keeping his distance. I mean, maybe he'll pop up at some point and we'll get that. But he has not been mentioned at all in any of this. And he certainly wasn't mentioned tonight. But that's what we're going to get going forward. Main event was Roman Reigns and AJ Styles for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. A lot of boos for Roman Reigns. Not very well liked here in Chicago. These two guys had basically 3 matches in one. The first match ended on, of all things, a countout. This was like, what was it? The SummerSlam 96 main event with Shawn Michaels and Vader. I think the first fall went to a count out, and then the second was a DQ. This was exactly the blueprint of the Shawn Vader match from SummerSlam that year. Just without all the outside interference. Except by Jim Cornette, maybe. So, AJ Styles pulled off a phenomenal forearm from the top rope to Roman Reigns on the outside, who then crashed through the announce table. Both of them went through the table. It was a very risky spot. Pretty incredible move. Roman couldn't make it in time. He got counted out. Shane comes out. He says, oh, no, 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 no. Not in this new era. We're not going to end a main event that way. This match is going to continue. No count out. And at this point, it was just patently obvious where this was going. The match continued. AJ came off the top rope, inadvertently was low blowed by Roman Reigns, who was then DQ'd. So AJ wins a second time, this time by DQ, but Roman retains the title. Stephanie comes out, almost on cue. And this is where I kind of groaned, because it's just so telegraphed. And this is where really the overbooking came into play. But here's the other thing I didn't like about this. And I really loved the match overall, but this is the problem I have with this. And it was, obvious in the last segment, and it was obvious here. It doesn't matter who's in the championship match. It doesn't matter if it's Roman Reigns. It doesn't matter if it's AJ Styles. It doesn't matter. It's all about the McMahons. This was a backdrop for Shane to come out, and then for Stephanie to come out. And look at how'd the pay-per-view end. The pay-per-view ended with a backstage segment with all three McMahons. And again, no Triple H. But Vince, Shane, and Stephanie. It ended with a McMahon circle jerk. Vince telling them, well, good job, Shane. Good job, Stephanie. And plotting for the next pay-per-view. So all these guys, they're just little bit players. And the one thing that never changes from one year, from one era to the next, at the end of the day, it's all about the McMahons. And all these other people and all these other parts, they're all just interchangeable puzzle pieces, and they don't matter. And I don't like that. I don't like that. So Stephanie comes out. She says, no, the match is not going to end like that. Now it's no DQ. So now you're waiting for, Gallows and Anderson to come out, which they did. And unfortunately, they did not align with Roman Reigns. There was no Roman Empire tonight. Very sad. They attacked Roman Reigns. AJ Styles got a near fall out of it. The Usos came out. They attacked Gallows and Anderson. Reigns knocked AJ off the top rope at one point. He fell on top of everybody outside. Reigns did his big flying dive from into the ring out to the floor, wiped everybody out, except AJ, who was not in the pile. And AJ jumped off the barricade, hit him with a forearm. I thought that was cool. But in the end, Roman Reigns got the win with a spear, clean in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3. There was a feeling of disappointment that washed over me, not because Roman won, but just because, he just won clean in the middle. And I kind of warned about this on the podcast earlier, of all the different scenarios that everybody laid out. This person may show up, this guy may turn, this may happen, that may happen. None of it happened. And maybe it will tomorrow night, maybe it will at Extreme Rules, because these two guys are going to have a rematch, they announced. It'll be Styles and Reigns for the championship in an Extreme Rules match. I'm not arguing that, because I'm sure they'll have a great match, but it does beg the question, why does the challenger, who lost clean in the middle, get an automatic rematch? Right? It's one thing if the champion gets a rematch, because they've programmed you to understand that if the champ loses, he gets an automatic rematch. But I never understood why the challenger automatically gets a rematch. I guess, as they will do with everything, they'll just explain it away by saying it's best for business. I said that on the podcast also, it's like, as ridiculous as that is, it's like one of the greatest things they've ever come up with, because no matter what they do, no matter how little sense it might make, they can always explain it away by just saying, well, it's best for business. It's actually quite genius. But if it's anything like the match we had tonight, it'll be a kick-ass match. This was a great match. This was an excellent main event. Roman Reigns deserves a lot of credit. AJ Styles obviously deserves a ton of credit because he's fucking great. This was his first pay-per-view main event in WWE. Hopefully his first of many. He tore it up. Not much of a shock there. A lot of hate I'm seeing online for Roman Reigns, and it's that blind hate. I don't like that. Because look, I may not like babyface Roman Reigns either. The guy. But Roman Reigns is not a bad pro wrestler. He's not as good as AJ Styles. I will give you that. But Roman Reigns is not bad. I've seen some bad pro wrestlers. Roman Reigns is not bad. So he carried his end, AJ carried his, and they had what I thought was an excellent main event, if not, overbooked. And that was the whole thing, the women's match with that finish, that god-awful finish, and all the interference and everything here. Both, main championship matches were clearly overbooked. But in the end, the main event delivered. And I think overall, from top to bottom, I think this entire pay-per-view delivered. And, I'm bringing up the Payback Insta poll that I threw up on Twitter when the show ended. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm just looking at the results now. We've already got almost 1,500 votes. 67% thumbs up, 33% thumbs down. I'm actually kind of shocked. I think that thumbs up should be a little bit higher. I think people are being a little too harsh on the show. And I think part of that might be that just sour taste from the way the main event ended. No big surprise, no big twists or turns, just a clean win for Roman. I am seeing a lot of hate for Roman Reigns on here, but I disagree with that. I think this was a thumbs up show. This was easily a thumbs up show. Honestly, top to bottom, it was probably better than WrestleMania. And you don't have to agree with everything that happened, but to give this show overall a thumbs down, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I think that's being a little too harsh. So that was your Payback 2016 review here on the Solomonster Sounds Off channel. You can listen to the full podcast each and every Sunday on the Solomonster.com, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music, and a whole host of other services. Give us a listen if you've never heard a full show before. I think you might like it. We will be back next time for a Sound Off Extra. You never know when these might pop up. There is no set schedule. I like to surprise people. But if you like what you hear, again, like I said, give the full episodes a listen. Give me a follow on Twitter at Solomonster. Have yourselves a good night, and we will see you back here again real soon. Until then, take care, guys.